So usually we, the faculty and the people from career service team, remain in the backstage, and we encourage our students to take initiative to communicate, to meet, and invite speakers like you. To the students, I would like to, I'm sure you all have gone through the brief introduction about ma'am, but she has been an active part of our Avantika University. She has been hiring the interns. The team of Maker Asylum is also giving us capstone projects, and we are also in talk for the placements. So students, all of the students who are joining from third year, second year and first year, I'm sure this is going to give you a lot of benefit in terms of the stories of successes, how industry people, especially when they are working on non-OEM platforms, like having their own setup in such a beautiful place like Goa, and how they deal with everyday activities, what are the challenges in design, not only in design, but also in execution of the projects, meeting the timelines, challenges, everything. So we are just ready to go. And again, I most welcome you, ma'am, and you can just start with your brief introduction, and then we can have the session.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Raghav, for inviting me. It's really a pleasure to be here and interacting with all the students. Yeah, like you said, we've been already working with a bunch of your students now, so which is really exciting as well. So thank you once again for giving me the opportunity to talk to a larger audience. If I may, should I share my screen and should I start with the presentation? Would that work?
Hi, ma'am.
Yeah, Veda.
Good afternoon to you. And how are you?
I'm doing good, Veda. Thank you.
And how's the COVID situation down there at Goa?
Well, I think January was a little, it's like everybody was sick around, but I think now it's a little bit better. January, I think a lot of people were down with COVID.
That's great. I guess it's a good time to start the session. Before you start with the session, I would like to present a small introduction for you. A very good afternoon to everyone present here. I am Veda, and today I take immense pleasure in moderating our first inspiring and eye-opening session. To make this session more interactive and fruitful, I request everyone to switch on your cameras and keep your microphones on mute. Hi, ma'am. It feels great to connect with you today. And before we start with our session, I would like to give a small introduction of our speaker today. The future of learning in India is seen to pass through a tunnel of evolution. Being a contributor to this evolution is Makers Asylum, India's first community open makerspace in Goa that allows collaborative ideation and making. Such an enthusiastic speaker is Richa Shrivastava, who believes in creating alternative learning avenues, which would stand significant in creating bespoke learning journeys for people. At Makers Asylum, Richa is committed to driving strategic collaborations and partnerships. Being a graduate of the Indian School of Business, she has previously worked with the Government of Andhra Pradesh to drive Fintech and Blockchain investments into the state. Having been working in the Indian Telecommunications industry, she has also been recognized as the emerging professional by the chairman of Aditya Birla Group for her contribution during the Telecom Spectrum Auctions held by the Government of India. Richa also holds the crown of being the Vogue Woman in the year of 2020 for her commendable devotion to the work via M19 Initiative started by the Makers Asylum. We are glad to have you with us, ma'am, today. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Veda, for the kind introduction. Let me quickly share my screen. Just 1 second. Okay, great. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes, it is loading. Yes, we can see.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So super excited to meet all of you. And thank you so much for, again, bringing me here to share a bunch of my experience from the past and what I've been doing, and in general, what we've been doing at Makers Asylum. And hopefully it'll be something that you take some valuable lessons from, and it keeps you motivated to do more things as well as the youth of the country. So I'm super excited to be here. I will be talking about the M19 Initiative, which is something that we did during COVID, and still the initiative continues. But let me first start a little bit with my introduction, which is a little off from what Veda did, but I thought I could give my personal introduction. I have some of these hobbies thanks to friends and people who've been around. So I, apart from doing the regular stuff, I'm a paragliding pilot. I've started doing scuba diving recently. I also love cycling, hiking, so a lot of like outdoor stuff. It's really nice to be in Goa and have the opportunity to sort of, also explore other things apart from work that we do on a day-to-day basis. So I wanted to start with that. But let me also take you back a little bit in time. This is from the year 2013. This was the first time I started my first job at Idea Cellular. So it was my first real job. I had just graduated out of college. I did my electronics and communication engineering. And this was something that I was super excited to do because it was a very exciting company. And I really wanted to do something that I had learned. So telecommunications being some subject that I studied as well, it was a super opportunity. So I just started my work at Idea, and I'd moved to Mumbai, and that's when I actually first encountered Makers Asylum. Vaibhav, my partner, and I'll talk a little bit about him a little later, but one of my friends had suggested that, if you're in Mumbai, if you want to do something fun over the weekend, apart from watching movies and partying, you could go to this new cool space called Makers Asylum, which is in Bandra. It's in a garage. So I was very inquisitive and I was super curious at what this place is. It sounded super fun. And I went there to take up a workshop around glass etching and making a lamp. And it was really exciting because I'd not been to a space as open, because I met the people over there. They said, okay, you want to paint a wall, go ahead and paint the wall. So you can see me actually painting a wall over here. So it was a really fun and collaborative environment where you really did not have to, think about if you had an idea, if you wanted to do something. There was a lot of freedom, which is generally not the case when you go to a lot of spaces. So I was super intrigued. And that's how the space looked like back in 2013. And that's Vaibhav over there. He's still like that. If you find him in Goa as well, he's at the lab generally like doing something or the other. But it was a very vibrant space. Even in 100 square feet garage, it was still a super vibrant space because I felt that I could, actually have an idea and make it happen because it was so exciting and collaborative. So what is really a makerspace? And you guys are all design students, so I'm guessing you do know a little bit about it, but let me give you, an insight into what a makerspace really is. When we started Makers Asylum back in 2013, the idea was to sort of create a space for people to come together, share tools, and make things. So it was a physical infrastructure, how it started back in the day, where it was sort of an open community lab. So where people like you, me, anybody could actually come and make their ideas happen because there was access to tools. So just to give you a little bit of visualization on how the space looks like, this is multiple spaces over the years. There was no space like this, by the way, when in 2013, because this was the only makerspace in India at the time, I think, which was just starting out. And the concept of makerspace really had not come down to India as well. It was an American concept back in the day, and having a DIY space, like things like this was not there back then. So these are multiple spaces, as you can see. We've moved 8 times in 9 years. And now we are in this beautiful village in Goa, inside this 100-year-old house where we've actually created this space now. But over the years, the things remain the same. So you'll see things like a woodworking workshop. These are all pictures from our space, by the way. So anything from a working workshop to a metalworking lab. So like things like, MIG welders and things like that. You will also find a digital fabrication lab. So laser cutting machine. I'm sure some of you must have used it. If not, it's a super machine to, really visualize ideas in 3D. A lot of architects, designers use it to prototype a lot of their ideas. Then there are, of course, 3D printers. there's an electronics and robotics lab. There's also virtual reality and things like that. So anything at the intersection of hardware design and programming is something that a space like this, and especially Makers Asylum, caters to, because we're really interested in the intersection of these technology areas. Yeah, this is how our space looks like right now in Goa. Like I said, it's inside this really beautiful old 100-year-old house. And it's a really amazing dichotomy of technology and like tradition. So it's really exciting to sort of be here. So what really started happening is that when we started the space, it was more of a DIY space, right? Like for people to come together and, you know, share tools and make things. But what really started happening was that over the years, a lot of people came to the space, but a lot of people did not know how to use these tools. So organically, what started happening was we started teaching people how to use these tools, because even till date, a lot of people don't know how to use these different kinds of technology areas to actually create solutions. So organically, a lot of people who started coming to the space wanted us to teach them how to do this. So we started designing programs, and they started getting bigger, and we started doing these workshops and things like that. So this started getting bigger over the years, very organically for us. And now we've had this pleasure and opportunity to work with various partners from across the world. So we work with universities, we work with large developmental organizations, we also work with corporate organizations. And through our programs now, we have alumni in over 40 countries. So from a makerspace, which was a physical space imagined, it became more of a learning space. And eventually we got so much opportunity to really work and design these experiences, these learning experiences that could integrate making at the core of it. So one part of Makers Asylum has always focused around education and creating these learning experiences. And then there's this beautiful part of Makers Asylum, which is the community. Because over the years, we've taught so many people. There are a lot of these, artists, designers, engineers, healthcare professionals, makers who've come to the space and used the space for their own personal projects. And this community has been a really exciting part of what we do, because by the virtue of this community, you're able to actually make a lot of ideas happen, because now these are people who are passionate about making, they have the skills, and now you can use this community to actually solve for some real world problems as well. So the other part of Makers Asylum has been around making, because we all are makers, we love making. And by the virtue of this community, we also sort of help a lot of product development work with a lot of corporate organizations. Over 30 startups have come out of Makers Asylum in the space of hardware, tech, and design and other things. And they've gone on to do some really exciting work. So the second part of Makers Asylum is basically focused on research and development and innovation work. So you can imagine the space now, which is the new definition of what we have at Makers Asylum, is a mix of this education space and this open innovation, research and development space, right? So it's a mix of both. So whatever we learn while we are making products, we are innovating on a normal day, we use all of that and put that back into our program so that more people can learn about how to go from actually ideation to actually making things. Because there's big inertia that happens, you have an idea, but how do you really make? How do you really, make that alive? And the underlying, vision of Makers Asylum has been to really provide people like you, like me, like everyone, the confidence to solve problems. And where do you get the confidence to solve problems is when you start making, and when you have a toolkit, you have a framework where you can actually use and create things. So that's what we primarily sort of do at Makers Asylum. And more than a space, it's a philosophy, because I think it transcends beyond a physical space. And that's what I think is super exciting and about Makers Asylum as well. So there are other projects as well that we've done in the past. I don't know if I'm stuck. Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was stuck. Okay, great. So like I said, it's just not the space, it is a different kinds of things. This is, for example, this is a project that we did with Hindustan Unilever around creating a mobile plastic recycling lab that went to teach people and children how to recycle plastic. And it actually had a plastic recycling unit inside it that helped you visualize a plastic bottle to actually, upcycle it with a 3D printer at the back to, a new product altogether. So things like this. We've also been doing a lot of programs with differently abled community to help them, learn about these skills and teach them so that they could also make their own prosthetics and, use these technology areas to actually create their own solutions for their own problems as well. This is another project, which is the Maker Auto, which is also a very interesting project that was designed to be a mobile version of Maker's Asylum, to actually take what we know to different parts and to teach children from government schools how to actually make things using a 3D printer and laser cutter and things like that. So anyway, so over the years, I mean, back to my story. So 2013, I started sort of, coming to Makers Asylum as a member as well. But over the years, I was also doing other things. Like I was working for the government, I was doing my business degree, but I always kept a tab on what, was happening in this space. And, there were articles like this in World Economic Forum that, makerspaces boost community resilience, how are makers tools accelerating ideas. So there was a lot of conversation that was happening globally around makerspaces. And I was always very curious about, how can I be associated with a space like this in a more permanent format, right? Like I was a member. I loved coming to the space. I always thought it was super exciting, but how do you really sort of be part of it? And how do you sort of really help build on the philosophy and the outreach of something so exciting? So I kept tab of, this over the years, and I kept seeing all the really exciting work that Makers Asylum was doing. And then fast forward to 2018, I was just coming out of my job at the Government of Andhra Pradesh, and I was looking to do something really exciting. And I was really looking forward to the next phase of what I want to do. And who was doing a lot of work with a lot of French universities, was in Paris, and he was hosting this program called the SPP School, which is one of our flagship programs now. And that's when I got to meet him again, because I was also on a break, and we both got together, and I started understanding a little bit of the work that he was doing from a education perspective of how, this kind of hands-on education can be passed on to more younger generation, the youth, and how do we, build on that. So that's when we met. And that's when I started officially working with Makers Asylum about 4 years ago. And since then, it's been super exciting, the whole journey, because it's very unique, the kind of work that we're doing. And it's been a real privilege working with the community of makers, because they're so passionate and they want to solve. And we want to sort of create an ecosystem where more people can come in and use this platform and opportunity to do more things and solve more problems. So that's what we've been doing so far now. But I'm going to go back to the story of the pandemic now. So 2018, I started working, and then 2 years down the line, the pandemic hit. So which is March 2020, and all of us went into lockdown. Just like most people and most organizations, we also had to shut. So we had a physical space in Mumbai, and we had to shut down on 23rd of March, 2020. And instead of going back home, what we did was we decided to quarantine at the space. So a couple of us, our team and everyone, we said, okay, fine, we're not going to go back home. Let's be near our tools so that we could do something exciting, because it was like a apocalyptic situation, right? Like you're imagining yourself in an apocalypse. So it was exciting to be next to the tools so that we could do something exciting as well at the time. So we decided not to go back home and just be at the space. And one of the first ideas that we came across was there was a lot of at the time, of course, when we go back, India was never into manufacturing PPEs. There was a lot of deficit of what was needed by the frontline workers at the time. And the government had put out some of these things, there was an important list of things that the government wanted to procure and things like that. And number 3 on that, I think at the time, was face shields, because that was like a primary protective equipment for frontline workers to, use. And we said that, okay, hey, we have a 3D printer, we have a laser cutting machine. Let's start prototyping these face shields and see what we can do with it, because it's something that's required. Let's start working on it. So we put a modest target of 10,000 face shields between 5 of us. And we started a crowdfunding campaign to see if we could, make these and, actually give it to the frontline workers. So At 10,000 also at that time was a pretty large number for like 4-5 people, because 10,000 face shields making by hands is going to take you like days and days to actually make them. So we started with that, and slowly the space started transforming. That's our space, and a lot of volunteers started coming out. So we called for help. A bunch of folks in Bombay started coming to the space. This is our space. It's converted into a sort of a factory assembly line. If you see, people are actually making shields. We were making shields like day in and out, 16 hours a day. We were actually making shields, but they were not enough because there were so many hospitals who were trying to reach out to us that they wanted face shields. And this is in Mumbai, which was sort of an epicenter at the time, because March, Mumbai was like the first place to get, I mean, COVID was like first hit majorly in Mumbai. So there was so much demand, and we were trying to make these at our space. We went through, because you guys are design students as well, you'll appreciate this more. We went through 21 design iterations of this one particular product, which is a face shield. If you see over here, this is a paper prototype that we started with. And then we, started testing these materials like MDF. We started laser cutting acrylic. Then we chanced upon something called the foam board, because a lot of these other materials that we were working with, they could not be used in an ICU because of various reasons. And we went through 21 design iterations. And finally, we actually had this design on the left, which was the one that we injection molded as well, eventually. But went through 21 design iterations in almost about two weeks, which is from thinking about the project to actually creating it, which was pretty fast because we had access to some of these tools, the community, the skills. We were able to do this very quickly. And still we were not able to make enough. So one of the things that we really believe in and has been part of the maker culture is to open source and share. So just like everything else, we decided to open source our design and start activating people from across the country, because apparently we did not know this at that time, but there was this whole small scale industry of laser cutters in India, because laser cutting machines have been used predominantly for marketing materials and things like that. So there's a big industry that, so you'll find laser cutting machines in different parts of the country, even small towns and villages, which we sort of chanced upon that inside. And we said that, great, we have a laser cutter, we've got these designs, let's start open sourcing these and sharing with people. And the really exciting part that happened was, because there was a massive choke supply chain, you could not transport anything at the time, but you could transport knowledge and you could skill people to actually make them. And that's what made the difference. So it was super exciting. We were able to activate 42 cities, towns, and villages in India. And we were, of course, in the news. A lot of people wrote about the initiative. A lot of really, we garnered a lot of support, because I think at the time there was nothing like this happening and people were really excited to really support it. So we got a lot of attention, and because of that, we were able to also activate more and more people. So 42 cities, towns, and villages joined, and we were able to go from 0 to 1 million face shields in 49 days, which went on to become a massive global case study, because it was an open source movement. It was a community-led, citizen-led movement, and even large organizations and factories were not able to make so many face shields at that point in time. So it became this massive case study across, and these were people from all over. So these were ages 15 to 24, so which is defined as youth by UNESCO. And the SDG school, the idea was to sort of, create this program where we could give people the toolkit to actually go from ideation to actually making things for larger, SDGs. So because, just like, the pandemic, the world is sort of facing a convergence of economical, environmental, social crises, right? And the way things are changing, problem solving is becoming more complex. And every day, if you think about problem solving, and things like the SDGs, which was defined in 2015 by world leaders to actually have a global framework to work around what problems should you solve. These problems are large, and there is a deficit of almost $2.5 trillion every year to solve these problems. So how do you sort of really tackle a problem statement like that? So basically that premise and context, we designed SDG School back in the day. The idea was to create this 2-week-long experiential learning program for people to come together from interdisciplinary groups like designers, engineers, architects, all kinds of people who could come together and look at problems from different lenses and solve together as a team, just like what we did in the M19 initiative. There were different kinds of people. Everybody brought different perspectives to the table. And this program sort of was designed to, to capture that whole learning experience, because this is a great starting point for somebody to think about solutions. We all, think we all have certain skills that we can contribute, and all of our skills together, when collectively put together to the right problem statement, can create some really impactful solutions. So this particular program was designed to sort of get that starting point for all of us, so that we could think about these larger problem statements, break them down, and actually create impactful solutions for communities around us. So far, we've been doing this since 2015. We've tackled about 12 SDGs. There's an alumni base of over 1,000 people. We've created projects, which are about over 120 projects. A lot of organizations are part of this program. And now we have participating countries in over 30 plus locations. So a lot of different kinds of alumni in parts of the world. And we've also taken this program to introduce it to leaders across the world. And it's a truly global immersion experience where you're able to actually interact with different kinds of people with different perspectives from different countries and look at these larger problems as well to really start. And we have a great, amazing executive steering committee. This is Eric, who's director for UNESCO. Francois, he's a very well-known scientist in Paris, in France. He runs this organization called CRI, which is the Center of Research and Interdisciplinarity. They do research in natural sciences and biology and things like that. But how does interdisciplinarity of research works and things like that? This is Navi, who's the author for Frugal Innovation and Jugaad. He's written a lot of books over the years, and also advises governments and corporate organizations on how to inculcate frugal innovation as their strategy. Because in places like India and most part of the world, there are lesser resources, but there are larger problems. So how do you sort of really look at problem solving from a frugal innovation perspective? And this is Sandrine. She's the attaché for science and technology at the French embassy. So because of that, we do a lot of work in France as well. And the way that the program is structured, it's a 10-day long program where it's super experiential. So we start with introducing you to the SDGs. A lot of experts come in. We also then take you through design thinking to actually break down the problem statement, empathize with your user group. Then we work on solutions and prototyping of these solutions. We also introduce you to the other skills as part of Skill Bazaar. So you're doing a lot of you're learning different kind of things. Like, say, for example, you want to learn about virtual reality, you want to learn about like blockchain. How can you use these different skills to also incorporate into your solution? And then you're prototyping this idea, and there's an open house, which we have, where we showcase this and then connect it to this large network where you can actually progress and create social enterprises and create these solutions in real life. Because being in college does not mean that you guys can't solve any problems, right? We all can solve problems at any point in our lives, right? So the idea is to do that. And of course, we've got great partners on board from different tiers who've contributed to the program. So these are kind of sort of, people who'll come in to talk to you about, say, the SDGs. So if we have, this is from last summer when we did this program. This happens online, but it's super intensive. So it's about 4 hours a day. It's live, it's experiential. So you will get to meet a lot of different kinds of folks who will gonna give you insights into what kind of problem statements that you should be solving. So we bring in a lot of mentors from different parts. We also have, like I said, different kinds of workshops around, frugal innovation, storytelling, effective communication design, virtual reality, 3D printing, Figma, whatever that you need, prototyping. How do you sort of do that? And We expose you to a cohort of problem statements, which are curated with the partners like UNDP, UNESCO, and others, where these are real life problem statements as well. These organizations are looking for these solutions as well. So you have the opportunity to actually contribute to a real life problem statement if you want to. And then in the pandemic, like I said, we've also moved this virtually now. So it happens virtually, but it's super exciting because there are more people who can join from different parts of the world. They don't need to travel. And it becomes a very exciting global immersive experience. Just opens up your mind around, what you can do with interdisciplinary groups from across the world. And this year we're doing this program from 20th June to the 1st of July, and the applications are going to open on the 18th of February. So I would love to invite all of you to be part of this and contribute, because if we are collectively working together, I think that's when problem solving happens at its best. And I think Makers Asylum, the M19 Initiative, all our programs are examples of how of a collective can really make a lot of difference. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop here.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was a very insightful session. Moving forward, is there anyone who has any questions who wish to ask?
You guys can unmute yourself and ask me a question as well. Did the concept start as a tinkering lab? I mean, yes, it is. A Makerspace is a tinkering lab, of course. I mean, tinkering lab, I think, came in much later in India specifically. But the history of maker spaces sort of goes back many, many years. But I think just to give you sort of, one more perspective on that, I think one of the major things that happened in the United States was that the MIT Center of Bits and Atoms back in 2001 sort of started something called this whole foundation called Fab Foundation. And they were creating these labs called Fab Labs that could be these fabrication labs basically inside universities, specifically to actually encourage local prototyping and making and things like that, because there was a whole movement around making in America, and they wanted to sort of really harness the whole DIY culture for making back then as well. But the idea was to sort of create these fabrication labs where there could be experimentation happening so that there could be product innovation work that could be accelerated. So if you see a lot of universities, especially engineering universities in the US, have a makerspace inside, which is a fab lab, and spaces like MIT Media Labs. And there are very few independent makerspaces like ourselves. We are an independent makerspace. We are not inside a university, or we are not inside an organization. We are an independent makerspace open for everyone, but mostly you'll find a lot of makerspaces inside. So when Vaibhav actually moved back from Boston, he was in Boston for many years, and he was working at MIT Media Labs as part of one of the startups called iNetra. They were into virtual reality-based eye diagnostic devices. So when he moved back to India with the startup at MIT, he was working on this product, which was this virtual reality-based eye diagnostic device. And in India, there were no space where they could actually iterate on the design of the product themselves. There was no DIY space as such. You had to go to service provider the product and things like that, and you lost a lot of information in the whole process. So it was, when he started it was more like a personal need to actually develop that product and do more things with it, and then eventually sort of organically grew into this large community.
Guys, any more questions? Okay, I have a question, Richa.
Yeah, sure.
Can you explain your experience with Mr. Sunil Mangchuk when he was there at Makers Asylum making a guest speech?
Yeah.
how was your experience with him? Like such a wonderful man and such a great start for Makers Asylum. How was it? How are you feeling?
It was really amazing. Sonam, he runs a couple of these schools in Ladakh, which is one university is called Hial and the other one is Sekmol. And they've been doing a lot of course, great work and alternative learning work in Ladakh. So as part of the SDG school, actually, he sends a lot of his students to the program every year as well, and some of the management to also exchange and see, like, what they can learn as part of our program and vice versa. So actually during that year as well, he'd sent about 10 students to the program and a few of his management from Sekmol and Hial. So he was there to sort of, be part of the final day and the open house. It was really beautiful because some of the things that, he talks about specifically around, how things like these and programs like these can offer like a lifelong learning opportunity for all of us. It's really exciting because if you generate passion for problem solving and if you really instigate that passion, I think it becomes like this lifelong journey to, really work on solutions, and that becomes the way of life. So I think that was super exciting when he spoke about that, and how that sort of also, from a perspective of Makers Asylum ethos really matched. I think it was that moment of, wow, he also thinks like the way that we think. And I think that was really exciting.
Great, great.
I do have another question. What was that one particular incident that led you to this thought of making face shields? What was that, something that happened where you thought that instead of masks, you should also make face shields for people?
So I think India went into a lockdown a little later in March. I think in the US and other parts of the world, like Italy and other places, there was a lot of the lockdowns had started earlier. And there were a lot of this requirement that was up and coming in different parts of the world. So being part of this large open source maker community as well, with these maker spaces and all the other people who are part of this global network, we had that opportunity to also sort of see what was happening early on in other countries. And because of that, we were able to sort of have this sense that maybe this could be like the direction that we should take. So because there was so much knowledge sharing happening in this open source space, because that's how it is culturally, that they're sharing design, they're sharing what they know. And so I think by the virtue of that, it was easier for us to sort of see that, okay, yeah, this is what is happening in the US, Italy, other places. Maybe this is the good direction for us because it's sort of replicated in all other countries as well.
I understand. There's another question in the chat box. Arya Dikshit asks that how many branches of SDG schools are situated in the country?
SDG school is not a physical thing, it's a program. So there are no branches of SDG school. It is the program is called SDG school. So you can be part of the program twice every year. It happens in the summer or in the winter. So it generally in June, July, or December. So you can apply for the program. We work with about 100 to 200 participants every year in each cohort. So you can be part of the program, or the university can also partner with us and send students to the program, whichever format really works out. But there are open applications, and there are also university partnerships where we also work with universities directly. Then they select students and send to the program as well. So either way, so it's not like a physical thing, it's a program. So it happens twice every year.
Yes, guys, any more questions? Yes, here's another question from Ishita. She asks, how does your problem solving process look like, and what steps do you prefer following personally?
I think it's a very iterative process, because you have to, you never have the perfect problem statement in the beginning. You assume that there is a problem, but you always have to test whether it really is a problem or not. And you go back and forth with understanding the problem, empathizing with people who you're solving for, then coming back and reiterating what the problem is. So I think it's a very iterative process when you're solving anything. And even when you're creating a solution, you still have to test. You have to again come back and see whether it's working or not for somebody. So if you go back to my presentation as well, I spoke about 21 design iterations of a simple product like a face shield. Why do you have to do 21 design iterations? Because you have to go and test with people. The frontline workers are telling you that, hey, you cannot use this material because in ICU, it will catch bacteria. So, okay, fine, you go back and think about a different material. This design is not working because it's heavy on the head. So you go back and think about like something else that can work better. So, it always is going to be like this iterative process of thinking. And I think that's what we do at Makers Asylum. And I think generally as well, if you're solving, you have to be ready to follow something because nothing's perfect in one go. Does that make sense? Nice.
Yes, it does. Are there any more questions? Whom does anyone want to ask? Or
I had a question.
yes.
What I wanted to know was what kind of students or people is the lab looking for, like during the selection process, or is it a selection or everyone who tries to apply gets in? I wanted to know that.
So as part of our programs, there is an application process. So you'll have to apply for the program, and depending on your inclination and some of your past work, we look at holistically how do we select people as part of the programs. As part of our space and organization, we like for the internships and permanent positions, again, it's depending on what we need at the time. So at the moment, like some of the students from your university, from Avantika, have been doing internships with us. They're on different programs. So they're looking at user experience and design. They're looking at what kind of different products can we integrate for learning and things like that. So depending on what we need, we look at your skill sets as well. But for our programs like SDG School and things like that, there's an application process.
Like for the programs, I mean, is there a particular is there a particular type of applicants you're looking for, or is it like I'm not being able to frame my question so well.
No, I get it. I mean,
okay, yeah.
we actually, the program application process is basically designed to get as much variety into the pool as we can. So we are looking for different kind of disciplines. So it's not going to be just designers, for example. It's going to be other people as well. It can be people from policy background, from business background. So it'll be a mix of different kind of people. What we're really looking to do in the program is to create this interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity in the participants, because something that a designer can see as a solution could be valuable for a particular kind of a problem statement, but maybe somebody else can add different perspective to it. So we want to like create a pool of people who have different perspectives as well, so that you're able to come to something which is a holistic solution at the end of it, if you know what I mean. If you, yeah, hopefully I'm able to explain it.
Thank you so much. That's what I wanted to know.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, we are 5 minutes into ending the session. Are there any more questions you guys wish to ask? Okay, cool. So as we are near to end this session, I would like to thank you on my behalf of my college for taking out your valuable time and sharing your insights with us. And I'm sure that these insights will help us tremendously in our career journeys. And we wish you all the best for your future endeavors. And thank you so much for your time again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.